How to deal with a catastrophic death. How to deal with a catastrophic death. I can't answer that question because I don't know if there is a way to deal with catastrophic death. I heard that when Yaakov David Kotlarski passed away, he passed away on Shabbos morning in Montreal, and after Shabbos, Rabbi Herschel Kotlarski's friends went into the rebbe and asked the rebbe how they should break the news to Mrs. Kotlarski, Allah Shalom. This story happened more than 50 years ago. And the rebbe's response was, I don't know how you tell such a thing to a mother. Now, by the rebbe saying, Ich weiß nicht, he wasn't saying not to tell her, but he was simply saying there's no good way to do it. A person who experiences an acute and sudden tragedy, if I may use these words, should let themselves fall apart. To be really, really broken by it. I don't think the right thing to do is to be stronger than it. When a catastrophe befalls a person, I think they're not only entitled, but I think it's necessary to be completely broken by it, completely shattered by it, and they have to experience that. And they have to allow themselves for a period of time to fall to pieces. I don't know how long that time is, whether it's a month or it's a few months. But it's not only normal and reasonable, but I think correct for a person to feel that kind of pain in the kind of way that they feel completely broken. The thing that's important is that they have to do this, and then they have to stop doing it. They're not allowed to stay in that space. And that's the tricky and the hard part, because falling apart is emotionally resigning, is emotionally going into despair. Putting an end to that falling apart almost sounds like it's not sincere, it's not true, and it's not real. But from the little bit that I understand about this, that is not the case. I think people who don't fall to pieces when they experience a catastrophe don't experience it. And when they don't experience it, they don't manage it. You can make believe it hasn't happened, but it has. So I think that's the tricky part. You need to, if I understand it, you need to allow yourself to completely fall apart, to be broken, to be devastated, to be shattered. For a time, not just for a few hours, for a few weeks. And then at some point, either by yourself or with the help of a loving friend, you have to say it's enough, to stop. And you have to remember that you have responsibilities, that you have a life, that you have a husband, that you have a wife, that you have children. And you have to go back to living. And I don't think going back to living means acting like as if this didn't happen, or acting like as if this catastrophe has already been processed. I don't know if people ever process catastrophic deaths, but even if they do, it doesn't happen in a few months. It takes many, many, many years. And it's about acceptance. It's about acceptance. It's not about resolution. It's not about figuring it out and making it right in your own mind. When God slaps in the face, it is by definition something that we'll never be able to, as human beings, as finite human beings, internalize and process in the kind of way that our humanity will agree with it, that our humanity will process it, will internalize it. This is a moment when you have to fall back on the deepest kind of faith. And it's ironic that when something terrible happens, and just like all the good things that happen in our lives come from Hashem, all the bad things in our lives come from Hashem. And when we get a slap in the face, the Eibishter slapped us in the face, and the Eibishter is not slapping us in the face for us to process it and figure it out. The Rebbe is just slapping us in the face because he chose to slap us in the face for reasons that are his, or to say it in other words, reasons that are not reasons for us. And our place in it is to be able to accept it and to be able to live with it. I think processing and internalizing a catastrophic death is not about making sense out of it. It's about having a place for it, putting it in a place and going on living. And of course, the truth of life is that we get through life by living it. Meaning to say, if a person stops living his life and starts to study his life, he or she will very quickly fall into a depression, because not living life in itself is depressing, but examining life is very depressing, because everybody's life has aspects to it, significant aspects to it that are painful. And just by going through the motions of living, we not only survive, but we also somehow handle it. We manage it. The famous answer from the Rebbe to the people of Kfar Chabad after 6 young boys were murdered by the Bedouin after Pesach in Tafshin Tezayin, I think. And the Rebbe wrote, Bebeniya tis nechamu. There's no nechama, there's no consolation for the tragedy. But by getting busy doing good things, you find healing, not necessarily resolution, not necessarily answers, but you can go on living. And I think that's my answer, based on the little bit that I've heard and read and studied. I don't know such an experience personally, thank God. But this is how I understand it. You have to allow yourself to fall apart. You have to feel that pain. You have to. If you wouldn't, you would be normal. And then you need to at some point say, I have to go back to my family, my responsibilities, and live. And over the course of many, many years, there'll be a place for the person that we tragically lost. There'll be a place for the tragedy itself, and there'll be an ability to live, and even to live meaningfully and with joy.